The storage unit trap. There was something about the deal that seemed too good to be true. But that's how these things always start, right? A simple online listing, an unbelievable price, and just enough reassurance to make you ignore that nagging voice in the back of your head. I had been searching for the perfect wooden desk for my daughter. She was starting high school and I wanted her to have a quiet space to focus. Furniture shopping had been frustrating. Everything was either too expensive, too flimsy, or too far away. Then, late one evening, as I scrolled through Craigslist, I found it. A beautiful antique desk. Solid oak, intricate carvings along the edges and in pristine condition. The seller, a man named James, had listed it for a fraction of what it was worth. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before I sent a message. He responded almost immediately. "Hey, the desk is still available. It's in a storage unit right now, but I can meet you there tomorrow morning if you're interested." I hesitated. A storage unit? That was unusual, but not unheard of. Some people rented storage units when they were moving or downsizing. Besides, his profile seemed normal. No red flags, no weird messages, just straightforward and polite. That should have been my first warning. I agreed to meet him the next morning at a storage facility on the outskirts of town. The meeting. The sky was a dull gray as I pulled into the facility. Rows of identical storage units stretched in both directions, their metal doors gleaming under the pale morning light. The place was nearly empty, aside from a single security camera perched above the entrance and a maintenance worker in the distance. I pulled my jacket tighter against the chilly air and checked my phone. 9:57 a.m. He had said 10 a.m., but I like to arrive a little early. A few minutes later, an old blue SUV rumbled into the lot. James stepped out. He looked like his profile picture. A man in his late 40s, tall, broad shoulders, baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. His flannel shirt was tucked neatly into a pair of worn jeans. Everything about him seemed ordinary. That should have been my second warning. "You must be Sarah," he said with a friendly nod. "Yep," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "The desk's in here," he said, gesturing toward a unit halfway down the row. He walked ahead of me, whistling softly as he pulled a small silver key from his pocket. Something about the situation made me uneasy. Maybe it was the way his footsteps echoed too loudly in the empty lot. Maybe it was how quiet everything else felt, like the world had pressed pause around us. The lock clicked open. He slid the metal door up with a groan of rusted hinges. Inside, the unit was dimly lit, packed with random furniture, tools, and stacked boxes. A faint musty odor clung to the air. The desk sat in the back, partially obscured by a stack of chairs. "Looks like it's in great shape," I said, peering inside. "Yeah, it's a beauty," James replied. "Come on in, take a closer look." I hesitated. It wasn't fear, not exactly, just a gut feeling. Like stepping into an elevator with no buttons, like standing at the edge of a frozen lake, unsure if the ice would hold. But he was standing there holding the door open, waiting. What was I going to do? Back out now and look like a paranoid idiot? So I stepped inside. I locked in. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, I heard it. The heavy clang of metal slamming shut. My stomach dropped. I turned just in time to see James snapping the padlock back into place. "Just so we're not disturbed," he said. A slow, creeping wave of dread crawled up my spine. I forced a nervous laugh, stepping back toward the desk as I searched for anything to say. "Oh, I should check if this will fit in my car. My husband is waiting outside." "He's better at judging these things," I said, forcing my voice to stay casual. For a split second, his grin faltered. "I didn't see anyone in your car when I pulled up," he said. I swallowed hard. "Oh. Yeah," I said quickly. "He likes to walk around while he waits, probably just stretching his legs." James tilted his head slightly, watching me too closely. Then, after an agonizing pause, he shrugged. "Sure, let's go check then." Escape. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the key, and slowly unlocked the padlock. The moment the door rolled up, I bolted. I didn't look back. I heard him call after me, his voice sharp, but I kept running, my keys clenched in my fist. I yanked the car door open, jumped inside, and locked it the second I was in. James had stepped out of the unit now, watching me with something unreadable in his expression. He didn't run after me, he didn't yell, he just stood there. I threw the car in reverse and sped out of the lot. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station 10 minutes away. My hands were shaking. The aftermath. The police arrived at the storage facility within the hour. They checked the unit. There was nothing technically illegal inside, just a man with a storage space full of furniture, a workbench and tools. Too many tools. The officers told me James claimed it was just a misunderstanding, that he locked the door for safety and that he was just being cautious about theft. But something about his expression, his calmness, the way he stood watching me leave, no, it wasn't a misunderstanding. For weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling of how easily things could have gone wrong. I ignored my instincts. I walked into a cage, and he locked the door behind me. I don't use online marketplaces anymore. Some deals aren't worth the risk. Because next time, the door might not open. And next time, someone might not make it out. Moral of the story: never meet a stranger in an enclosed space. Trust your gut. If something feels off, walk away. And if a door closes behind you, make sure you have a way out. Story 2. The lawnmower setup. The trade that almost cost me everything. I've always been a hands-on guy. A carpenter by trade, I've spent years building, fixing, and crafting. So naturally, I've accumulated more tools than I could ever possibly use. That's why I decided to put a few up for trade on Facebook Marketplace. Simple deal. Someone gets a quality power tool and I get something I actually need. When a guy named Rick messaged me about swapping his almost brand new lawnmower for my high-end power drill, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. The mower looked great in the pictures. Clean, barely used, and worth way more than what I was trading. Rick seemed easygoing in his messages and we worked out the details fast. He suggested I come to his house to check out the mower in person before finalizing the deal. His reasoning made sense. He wanted to show me how it worked before I took it off his hands. But the moment I pulled up to Rick's house, I felt something was off. The house at the edge of town. Rick's address led me to a house on the outskirts of town. One of those older places that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in years. The lawn was overgrown, and there was an old sedan parked awkwardly in the driveway, half covered in dirt like it hadn't moved in months. The blinds on every window were drawn, even though the sun was still out, and for some reason, the porch light was on. I sat in my truck for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, my instincts quietly screaming at me. I should have backed out right then. But I didn't. Rick stepped out of the house before I could change my mind, waving me over with a big grin. He looked just like his profile picture, middle-aged, scruffy beard, baseball cap. Seemed harmless. I forced a smile and grabbed my drill from the passenger seat. "Hey man, thanks for coming by," Rick said as I approached. "Mower's out back just past the shed. Come on, I'll show you." His tone was friendly enough, but something about it felt... Still, I followed him around the side of the house, toward the backyard. The moment I turned the corner, my stomach dropped. A backyard that should have been empty. The lawnmower was there, just like in the pictures. Clean, well-maintained. But I barely noticed it, because I wasn't alone. A second man, taller, broader, rougher-looking than Rick, stood near the back fence, leaning against a rusted pickup truck, arms crossed, watching me. Rick followed my gaze and let out a nervous chuckle. "Oh, that's just my buddy, Pete. He came by to help me clean up the shed." Pete didn't say a word. He just stared at me. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to walk away. But I forced myself to focus. Stay calm. This could still be nothing. Rick knelt beside the lawnmower, pulling the starter cord to show me it worked. "Good as new, man. Like I said, barely used." I nodded, trying to keep my tone casual. "Yeah, looks solid." And then I heard it. The sound of tires crunching against gravel. I turned just in time to see another truck pulling up. My truck. Blocking it in. My pulse spiked. A third man stepped out. I didn't recognize him, but he looked just as rough as Pete. He didn't say a word. Just stood there, watching, waiting. I swallowed hard. They planned this. This wasn't just about a trade. This was a setup. Nowhere to run. Rick cleared his throat, as if sensing my realization. His tone changed. So, about this trade. Pete and I were talking, and we figure you should throw in a little extra, for the hassle. I forced a chuckle, even though my hands were sweating. We agreed on an even trade, man. Drill for the mower. That was the deal. Pete took a step forward, his expression hardening. Come on, dude, you drove all the way out here. No reason to be difficult. Just give us the drill, and maybe a little cash. My heart was hammering now. I knew what this was. They weren't just after my drill. They were testing me, to see how easy it would be to take everything I had. I needed to get out of there. I glanced at my truck. Pete and the third guy had me boxed in. If I ran, I wouldn't get far. I needed a plan. Fast. The escape. I took a slow breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. Tell you what, I said, pretending to be casual. Let me check my truck. I think I might have some cash in there. Rick hesitated, glancing at Pete. They took the bait. Yeah, all right, Rick said. Go check. I walked slowly toward my truck, doing everything I could to look calm. As soon as I was within reach, I bolted. I ripped open the driver's door, jumped inside and slammed it shut. Pete lunged for the handle, but I had already locked it. I didn't give him time to react. I threw the truck into reverse, slamming on the gas. The tires screamed against the dirt. I didn't care if I hit something. I just needed to get out. Pete yelled something, pounding on the hood as I jerked the wheel, narrowly avoiding the third guy's truck. Then, I was free. I tore down the road, heart hammering, gripping the wheel like a lifeline. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, they were still standing there, watching me go. The aftermath. I pulled into a Walmart parking lot and sat there, hands shaking. I dialed 911, reporting the address, describing Rick, Pete, and the third guy. The dispatcher listened carefully, then told me an officer would check it out. A few days later, the police called me back. They had gone to Rick's house. He was still there. But the other men? Gone. Rick claimed I had just changed my mind about the trade. He played dumb, acted innocent, but the officers didn't buy it. Turns out Rick had been flagged in several similar reports. People lured in by a great deal on Marketplace, only to find themselves in a dangerous situation. I was one of the lucky ones. Now, I never meet at someone's house for a deal. I never go alone. And I sure as hell don't ignore my instincts. Because next time, I might not be so lucky. Story 3. The Stalker Buyer. It started with a bookshelf. Selling old furniture online seemed harmless. I had an extra wooden bookshelf, sturdy but outdated, taking up space in my home office. It wasn't anything special, just a second-hand piece I had picked up years ago. Since it was still in good shape, I figured someone might want it. So I listed it on Facebook Marketplace. I never imagined that a simple sale would turn into a waking nightmare. The buyer, a man named Kevin, messaged me within an hour of my post. His profile photo showed a middle-aged guy with glasses smiling warmly. He seemed polite, normal, even friendly. Still available? Yeah, I replied. If you can pick it up, it's yours. Kevin responded immediately. Perfect. I can be there tonight. I hesitated for a second. Most buyers preferred daytime pickups, but Kevin sounded eager, and I just wanted the bookshelf gone. Sure, that works, I texted back, giving him my address. Biggest mistake of my life. The first visit. Kevin showed up right on time. His old pickup rumbled into my driveway just after sunset. He stepped out wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, looking every bit like a harmless book lover. I led him to my garage where the bookshelf was waiting. Wow, this is perfect, he said, running his hands along the wood, a little too long. I helped him load it into his truck, expecting a quick goodbye. But Kevin lingered. You've got a nice place, he said, glancing toward my house. Big. Must have lots of room for furniture. A weird comment, but I shrugged it off. Hell, just clearing out some space. Got anything else you're selling? He asked, tilting his head slightly. I shook my head. I just wanted him gone. Nope, just the bookshelf. Kevin smiled, but his eyes didn't. All right then, see you around. I didn't think much of those words at the time. I should have. The second time I saw his truck. A week later, I was in my living room when a familiar old pickup rolled down my street. It didn't stop, but it slowed down, lingering, right in front of my house. I stood frozen at the window, heart pounding. Was that Kevin? Was he looking for me? Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe. But then it happened again, and again. Every day for the next 3 days. I told myself I was imagining things, but by the fourth day, I couldn't deny it anymore. Kevin was watching my house. The knock at the door. Friday night. I had just finished dinner when I heard it. A knock. Not the polite 1-2 tap of a visitor. Loud, slow, deliberate. My stomach twisted. I already knew who it was. I crept toward the peephole, heart hammering. Kevin, standing on my porch, staring at my front door. I forced myself to breathe. Maybe he just wanted to ask something, maybe... No, this wasn't normal. He had no reason to be here. I hesitated but cracked the door slightly, keeping the chain lock on. Hey Kevin, what's up? He smiled, his eyes flickering toward the narrow opening. I was just in the neighborhood, he said, voice calm. Thought I'd stop by. Every muscle in my body tensed. Did you need something? Kevin's grin widened. The bookshelf? It's great. Thought maybe you had more furniture to sell. My mouth went dry. I knew this was a lie. No, I don't, I said firmly. But he didn't leave. He just stood there, watching. Finally, he let out a small chuckle. You sure? A house this size? I bet you've got something else I'd be interested in. Goosebumps rose on my arms. I don't, Kevin, you should go. He exhaled through his nose. Almost like a laugh. All right, he said, too casual. See you later. He walked slowly to his truck, then drove off. I locked every door and window twice. It got worse. The next morning, Kevin's truck was parked across the street. Empty. No sign of him. I spent the whole day jumping at every sound. By nightfall, I was a wreck. Was he waiting for me to leave? Was he planning something? Then, the pounding on the door. Not knocking, pounding. Heavy fists shaking the frame. I know you're in there, Kevin. I backed away, phone shaking in my hands as I dialed 911. He's at my door, I whispered to the dispatcher. He won't leave. Kevin was yelling now. Something about me lying. About me having something he wanted. Then, silence. I stayed frozen, listening. A minute later, I heard his truck start. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone. The final visit. 2 nights later, midnight. I woke up to the sound of tires screeching. Kevin's truck. Right outside. He was drunk this time. Slurring his words, screaming at my house, banging on the windows. Let me in. I grabbed the phone with shaking hands. 9511, what's your emergency? He's back, I gasped. Within minutes, red and blue lights flooded my street. Kevin was still shouting when the officers dragged him away. His face twisted with rage as they shoved him into the patrol car. You can't hide forever, he spat. Even with him gone, I didn't feel safe. The aftermath. The police told me Kevin had a history of harassment. They issued a restraining order, warned me that he wouldn't be back. I wish I could say that was enough. But even now, whenever I hear a knock, my stomach tightens. Because the truth is, people like Kevin don't just go away. And next time, I might not be so lucky. Story 4. The fake TV deal. Started with a great deal. I've always been a sucker for a good deal. After my old TV finally gave out after years of Netflix binges and gaming marathons, I figured it was time for an upgrade. But instead of splurging on a brand new one, I turned to Facebook Marketplace, where I had scored some solid finds before. A 60-inch smart TV for only $200. It seemed almost too good to be true. The seller's name was Tommy. His profile picture showed a smiling guy with a golden retriever. the kind of wholesome image that made him seem trustworthy. His post claimed the TV was slightly used and working perfectly. He was just upgrading to a bigger screen. "Still available?" I messaged. "Yep, still got it," he responded almost immediately. "Can you pick it up tomorrow?" "Yeah, what's the address?" He sent me an address about 20 minutes outside town, a mix of suburban homes and empty commercial lots. I hesitated. Normally I preferred to meet in public places, but Tommy insisted that bringing the TV somewhere would be a hassle. "No worries," I texted. "I'll see you at 5 p.m. I should have known something was off right then and there. The wrong side of town. The next day, the drive started out normal. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the streets. My GPS guided me down a series of familiar roads until I reached the outskirts of town, where the buildings grew older and the neighborhoods felt different. As I turned onto Tommy's street, something didn't feel right. Most of the houses here were run down, windows were boarded up, yards were overgrown with waist-high weeds. Abandoned furniture and broken-down cars cluttered the sidewalks. Then, I saw the house. The address matched, but it didn't look like anyone lived there. The front porch sagged, the paint peeled in long strips, and the windows were covered in plywood. The whole place reeked of abandonment. I slowed down, squinting at the mailbox. "No way," I muttered. I left my engine running. My gut told me to turn around and leave. Then, a message from Tommy. "You here?" I hesitated before responding. "Yeah, but are you sure this is the right address?" No reply. I waited. A minute passed, then two. Then, my phone vibrated. "Yeah, I'm in the back, just come around the side door." A chill crept up my spine. I stared at the house. There were no lights on, no signs of anyone inside. Why would he be waiting in the back? I should have left, but curiosity overpowered my instincts. The side door. I stepped out of the car, my fingers hovering over my keys, ready to bolt if needed. The air smelled damp, thick with the scent of rotting wood. The yard was eerily silent. No sounds of birds, no distant traffic. Just me and this empty house. As I reached the side of the house, I noticed something weird. The back door was slightly open. I froze. "Tommy?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. This was wrong. Then, footsteps. From inside. Slow, deliberate. Something shifted in the shadows beyond the door. A figure. A man. Not Tommy. He was tall, wearing a hood pulled low over his face. His posture was stiff, like he hadn't expected me to actually show up. Our eyes met. For one horrifying second, neither of us moved. Then, he took a step toward me. I turned and ran. The chase. I sprinted back toward my car, my heart hammering against my ribs. Behind me, I heard shuffling footsteps. Then, a second voice. "Adrian?" More footsteps, more than one person. I risked a glance over my shoulder. Two men, both rushing out from behind the house. Not Tommy, not even close. They weren't selling a TV. They were waiting for me. I reached my car and yanked the door open. One of them grabbed my hoodie. "Where are you going, man?" he sneered. I twisted free and slammed the door shut. He pounded on the window. "You're already here, might as well come inside." His grin was predatory. The other guy yanked on the door handle, but I had locked it. Without thinking, I threw the car into reverse and slammed the gas. The tires screeched, kicking up dirt and gravel. One of the men stumbled backward, cursing. I spun the car around so fast I nearly skidded off the road. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing in the street, watching me. No chase, just watching. Like they'd done this before. Like they'd do it again. The aftermath. I didn't stop driving until I was halfway across town. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. When I finally pulled over, I called the police. A squad car met me at a gas station and I told them everything. The fake listing, the abandoned house, the men who tried to grab me. They went to the house, but when they got there, it was already empty. No signs of anyone. No TV, just an abandoned, rotting house. But this was the part that terrified me the most. The police knew the address. "We've had reports about this place before," the officer said grimly. It was a trap. They'd done this to other people. Some weren't as lucky as me. Lessons learned. I'll never buy anything off Facebook Marketplace without meeting in a public place. No deal is worth your safety. And if a price seems too good to be true, it probably is. Because that $200 TV, it almost cost me a lot more.